Do you think that we have adequate oversight of the fugitive emissions, or is it underreported? There's a lot of concern that a lot of it is underreported.
Yeah.
And that's the big concern, isn't it, about natural gas?
Let me answer this pretty quickly. That's a question that we have heard. It's a responsibility of EPA to actually do this type of inventory work. We have developed regulations that require methane recapture at new hydrofracked wells. However, we know that there is a lot of system there where leaks are occurring. So we put out, actually the president, I should say, thank goodness for his leadership on this issue, he challenged us to put a across the administration-wide methane strategy together. You can read it. It asks EPA to continue to take a look at methane emissions and how they can be recaptured. The great thing about methane is that it actually is a product, not a waste. So every time you capture it, you make money. So it's kind of a really fun thing to work on. And so we actually put out a series of white papers looking at gathering the data that we needed to see how best to actually move those numbers forward, and we'll see where it comes. I think we're doing a pretty good job at estimating, but there are parts of the system where the data is not available to us, and we know that that's a big deal. And can I also just say that I appreciate your thoughts on natural gas and other things. Can I throw another little monkey wrench into the system, which is just me? This is what I do. I really want you to think also about the fact that some states are very worried about overdependence on natural gas. They really want fuel diversity. And some states are really taking way advantage of renewables, making them accessible to low-income populations. I have been to some places that have knocked my socks off about how they get solar on houses of low-income communities, using it as a job growth opportunity, a training. It's great.
Where, for example?
Actually, I was in, where was I? I go so many places. Where was Colorado? Colorado. They actually have a whole program. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't. It was in California.
Okay, we'll figure it out.
But they actually have a program where a nonprofit looks at putting solar on the homes for folks that are low income. They have a whole finance system arranged with the utility and with other nonprofits to support it, and they use it as a training program to coordinate out of some of the community colleges. So they get trained and they actually start getting in this business, because there's jobs in clean energy. But the one thing I wanted to tell you was, I do think we need to think about carbon capture and sequestration, because this is not going to happen overnight. We are not going to be at renewables tomorrow, folks, or low carbon strategy, an entirely low carbon strategy. I have great faith in innovation and investment in those. But I also think there needs to be a concerted global strategy on carbon capture and sequestration and use for carbon, because there are many, many countries that rely on coal use, and we cannot expect them to not want to bring their communities and their population out of poverty, and they're going to be burning those. And it's an international obligation, I think, for us to take a look at that, not only domestically, but internationally. And that's happening. I met with the Minister of the Environment in the UK earlier this week, and they were talking about spending considerable dollars on CCS for the very same reasons I just articulated.
Okay, gentleman in the red in the back.
Thank you so much for your great work. A presenter yesterday suggested there's a deal in Washington to hold back on the regulations in return for a carbon tax. Now, maybe you don't want to answer that question, so let me pose it to you a different way.
Who would have made that deal?
Roger, who would?
Yeah.
He didn't say who. Roger Sant was the presenter. So my question is, let's look at it a different way. $30 a ton carbon tax, $40, $50, tell me the limit. Would that do basically what your regulations are trying to do with market incentives rather than regulation?
I think there are a number of approaches you can take to address climate, and certainly that's one of them. I think the President's been very clear. If Congress really wants to go out and take action that's meaningful and that's aggressive, he'll work with them as best he can. But I have a tool that Congress gave me. I know what the science is telling me. I know what my legal obligations are. I know what my responsibility is under the Clean Air Act. And it actually is to regulate carbon pollution because of its impacts. I don't know. I don't have the data for that. I know that this is one tool that's readily available to us and that I can apply in the way that Congress told me to. And that's what we're going to do. If that sparks now a larger discussion and an epiphany in Congress that we haven't seen, I'm all for it, and I think the president is as well. If it sparks it when it's final, that's okay too. If Congress wants to join in and do a more comprehensive strategy that is a better approach, then I think that we would all welcome that approach. We just don't see it, and there is no trading of something that's a bird in the hand when I don't see Congress really stepping up to the plate at this point. But they'd always be welcome, and the president has said it time and time again. But this rule is going to be done next year, by this time, in June, and I think it's going to drive significant reductions, and I don't think it's going to be inconsistent with the investment opportunity that people would take advantage of if you went to a carbon tax.
Okay.
It's exactly looking at the same kinds of things.
Last question, gentleman back there.